Hello and welcome back to The Stories That Brought You Here. It's the podcast dedicated to the stories of the people from Pender Island, British Columbia. I'm your host, Chris Wakaluk, and I'll be sitting down in one-on-one conversations with current Pender Island residents to hear the stories that brought them to this playful little island we live on, and to also hear the stories that brought them to the point that they're at in their lives right now. Today, I will be speaking with Barbara Pender. Now, if you know Barb, like I know Barb, then you're going to know her as one of the women that works as a receptionist at the medical clinic. Well, we are going to get to hear Barb talk a little bit about that, along with a whole bunch of other things. We're going to get to hear Barb talk about her time coming to Pender Island when she was young in the summertime and visiting with her parents. We're going to get to hear Barb talk about some walking tours and journeys that she's been on in her life. She'll also talk about her involvement with the Solstice Theater, and we'll get to spend some time recollecting about a play that we were both involved in. And as well, Barb's going to go pretty in-depth into talking about some South Island history that her family played a prominent role in. All that and a lot more in just a really wonderful interview. And I just love Barb. I think she's great. And this was so fun to do. I haven't done a podcast in about 7 months. For obvious reasons, I think, or obvious to me, once this global situation came up in the spring, it seemed really ridiculous to ask people to sit down and reflect on their lives and really try to focus in on that when there was uncertainty as to what was happening in the following week or the following day even. So as time has gone on through the summer and now we're into the early fall, I've decided that it'd be a pretty good time to restart this project in a responsible way. So if you've listened to previous podcast interviews, first of all, welcome back. And second of all, I just want to mention that I'm going to be taking a little bit easier on the editing side of things. I really worked very hard to try to make the guests of this show sound as perfect as I could. I think it's a bit of a vulnerable thing. Actually, I know it's a vulnerable thing to present your life for other people to listen to and express yourself. And it's a really great thing that people do, sitting down and talking about their own personal history with me. And I mentioned to Barb before doing this interview that I was going to just do a bit of a light cleanup on the edit for this one, because I've come to the realization that spending time in front of the screen editing is not really where I want to be in my life. I love doing the interviews, and the edit, which I've enjoyed in the past, I'm not getting as much enjoyment out of. So hopefully, if everything goes smooth, I'll be able to do more interviews with less editing. If you have never heard a podcast here before, welcome aboard. We're going to go on a nice little ride together here, courtesy of Barb Pender. So the last thing I'll mention as well is at the end, it's not quite the end. There's a little bit of a epilogue, thanks to Barb catching something, and we just had to add a little portion at the end, but you'll hear that when you get there. So we'll see you on the other side of this. First little music, and then my interview with Barb Pender. Welcome to the podcast, Barb.
Welcome.
Right on. Okay. Well, so anyway, we've obviously been talking a little bit. You came over here on this smoky Tuesday evening. We're experiencing this weird weather in September. But anyway, I haven't done one of these, like I just told you, in about 7 months. So thanks so much for coming over. Appreciate it.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's jump in. We've actually talked a whole bunch already, so let's just get right to what we're here for, and that's what brought you to Pender Island.
Well, I think I can say I think I've always been on Pender Island. My family has been here on Pender going back to the late 1800s. So I think even when I was young and a baby, my dad grew up on Pender Island. So when I was born, we always stayed on Pender Island. So it was never that I don't think I ever was brought here. I belonged here because my mom and dad were here even back in the old days. Whereas I would have loved to have gone to other places for our holidays. We didn't, we always came to Pender, but I enjoyed it.
Let's work our way back through your parents here, because this is really interesting. So we talked a bit before the show, and I was like, I don't really want to know anything. I want to be surprised, right? So this is all new to me as well, too. But maybe let's just start with your parents' first names.
Arthur and Connie Pender. That's Arthur Benjamin Eustick Pender and Constance Gladys Gray. And Dad met Mum in England, and she was a war bride. When he went to go into the war, he was over there training in Scotland and met Mum on a beach in Wales, believe it was, and fell in love with her. And they eventually ended up getting married over there in England. And Dad was over fighting in the continent at that time and was sort of in there, going through the concentration camps. And I found out later that he was a big part of liberating a lot of the places over there. But in the meantime, they sent Mum over to Pender Island as a war bride. And those stories that Mum told me about being a war bride were just absolutely fantastic. They ended up getting, I think there must have been 500 women that were married, and they all got on, I think, Queen Elizabeth, and they went into Montreal and got on a train and started coming across Canada. Mum, who was an only child, never been to Canada before, all of a sudden she's with all these women, and I'll never forget the story that she told me about this one girl that she became quite close to, and she got off in some place in Saskatchewan or something like that, and all that was there was this big, tall Indian and all these brambles flying all over the place, and it was just a wooden deck, and it was one of her friends, and she just clung on to her, like crying, didn't want to leave or anything like that, didn't want to leave. And then Mum was so worried because she'd never been over, and then all of a sudden she hit the Rockies, and she said, "Oh my gosh, this is looking better." And then she finally got to the coast, and there was these aunts, the aunts on Pender. There was Lilia Spalding and Arthur Spalding were one of the first settlers on South Pender, and the aunts met Mum in Vancouver and drove her over to Pender. Well, drove her. The ferry at that time came in at Poets Cove, believe it or not, or Bedwell Harbor, I want to say. And it was only like once a week or something. So that was Mum's big thing, was to come over to Canada and go to this little island on Pender Island, and without her husband and not knowing anybody. But she said she was very welcomed, and there was no bridge at that time. I don't even think there was really a road, so to speak, too much that went all the way to the ferry.
Okay. So how old was your mom at this time, roughly?
She was probably about 26. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so she comes over, she's brand new to the country. She's like, okay, and here we go, small island. And when she told you this story, when you were a kid or a teenager, when did she explain this story to you?
I think she must have told it to me when I was younger too, but it was one of those stories that tell me that again, tell me that again, because I wanted to hear it, because I just thought it would be so exciting. I always had that spirit of adventure in me when I was young. It was just like, wow. Even growing up I basically grew up in Chemainus on Vancouver Island, but it was just, I always wanted to travel and do things and everything. But I was like, Mom, tell me what that was all about and how you felt going over to a place. And I just think that I always respected Mom for that. It was kind of what a journey for her to do that. And Dad didn't come for another 7 or 8 months because he was still fighting on the he was still doing his thing on the continent. So yeah, so she was by herself with these people she didn't know on a little tiny island that had nothing, like you had to row around to Hope Bay to get your groceries and everything because there was no bridge back then.
So did she have any support on the island when she was here?
Yeah, she had the aunts and, of course, Lilius and Spalding and Dad's sister, Anne, and I don't think Jiggs was there at that time, but there was lots of people on the island who just welcomed her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go further back into the history.
Whoa.
Well, because that's really neat, actually.
Yeah.
So, okay, it's on your dad's side that the history of the family is, but maybe stepping back into his parents' situation, because were they the first?
Well, Arthur Spalding was the first actual settler on the island. There was people who bought property on the island, but they never lived there. Like they might have had a little bit of thing, but never settled and built a home. It wasn't until 1886 that Arthur came from Orr Place in Cornwall in England. Yeah, so they had the big Spalding family, and then after Arthur got here, then his nephew Leonard came over, Leonard Higgs. So that's Higgs's Road. So you have Spalding Road, and then you have Higgs's Road. And Higgs's Road is obviously over more on Gallon Point Way. So that was Leonard, and Leonard settled there in that area, Clochey Road, which is at the very end. If you go right before you go down to the beach, it's Clochey Road. You can see it, and that's where they had their first place down there. And then eventually they went over closer to Higgs's Road on that one. And then Arthur built up on the hill, but he farmed that whole valley. So the whole valley was, I don't know if you ever read my cousin David Spalding's book, Put That Damn Mattock Away.
I have read it, actually. I have seen it, yeah.
It is so good. It's so good. And it tells the whole story of how he just, like, they just burned stumps and they did all their escapades with pigs and whatnot. It's just amazing, what they did there. And then he, of course, met Lilius Spalding. I guess he was out here and I heard about Lilius or through a friend or whatever. And she has an interesting history because her father was Joseph Mackay, who built the bastion in Nanaimo. The bastion, the little white bastion in Nanaimo, and he worked for Hudson's Bay and was a huge, worked with the natives and everything. And there is some native Maori blood in our family.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting in that part.
Just so people know, that book by David Spalding is available at the library. Put That Old Damn Attic Way. I think that was the title.
Put that old.
But I really enjoyed flipping through it. There's great drawings in there. There's amazing pictures in there as well too. I keep thinking about this one picture of 4 people, 2 men and 2 women sitting together, and it's from 1887 or 8 or 1890. But it looks like it was taken 100 years later. The smiles on their faces and the carefree. It's just something that doesn't really, I'm not familiar with photos from back in those days, but it's really well worth checking out. And I didn't realize he was your cousin.
Yeah.
Okay.
But David, well, obviously his grandfather was my great grandfather. So like Betty and my grandmother, who I never met, she died when she was 47. When she married, that's a whole other story, how William Pender got to Pender Island, how the Pender name. But when they married, they went over to, in the First World War, she became a nurse, and she worked through that Spanish flu, which killed more people than were actually killed in the First World War. And she survived it as a nurse, but it really suffered from her lungs. And she died at 47. And it was one of my biggest regrets ever that I never met Betty. Yeah. But Betty and Herb, which is David's father, were brother and sister. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Like first off, it's funny because I didn't understand, like I mentioned, the relation between the two of you, and it's blowing my mind just slightly right now. I was like, wait a second, Barb has a really deep, rich history with this island.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave the your ancestors behind too quickly, but I was just sort of thinking about moving into talking about your coming into awareness of Pender Island. But if there's something you want to touch on later about family heritage, we can definitely get back there, because I don't want to just skip over that quickly, because it sounds like there's a lot.
Oh, there is a lot, and I could probably go on a lot about that, but I think I could go on and on, but there's much more current history too, which is fun too.
Okay, well, let's try to weave that in as we go through a little bit. But okay, so you said you grew up in Chemainus?
Chemainus, yeah. Dad was a liquor vendor. He when he came back from the war, he worked in forestry and everything. It was tough, and actually, they one of the craziest stories was that they bought. I guess he got $5,000 when he left the war, which is a lot of money at that time, and they bought 16 acres in Somanos, which is Duncan area there. But Mom always craved to go back to England again. I guess, she just wanted to go see it again. So they sold this 16 acres, which is probably worth about $1.5 million or something now. It was prime property. And they went back and Dad worked, and he was bartending and working in factories and stuff like that, and realized it was a bit of a struggle after the war. And Mom realized that she loved Canada and wanted to come back. So my brother John was born over there. My older brother Bob had been born before that in Somanos. And so I wasn't on the scene yet, but John was born over there. So he always thought that was absolutely great, that he had a double citizenship, that he was part English and Canadian. So anyways, they came back, and she never went back. They never went back to live there again. So. And
then you were born when your family returned to.
Yeah, okay. And we lived in North Van, Deep Cove area, and that's where I was born. And then Dad got a job at the liquor store there. Then we built a house there. I do have remembrances of that place, but very vague, because I was pretty young. I was about 3 or something. It was very minor, but I think I have more about what my brothers told me about it, because I don't really remember just poignant little things. But anyways, we moved to Ucluelet because Dad got his own store. So we moved to Ucluelet and then lived there for 3 years in the rain, and lived in 3 different places and everything. Lived on top of a machine shop and had tons of adventures there. And then Dad would start looking, now that I've done my 3 years here, they were looking at Qualicum, they were looking at this, they were looking at that, and they ended up settling on Chemainus. So that's where I grew up. We ended up moving there when I was 6 years old. And my brothers, and they all did their old school. We all sort of graduated from there.
And so during this time when you're living in Chemainus, are you making regular trips to Pender Island with the family?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so how often are you coming over?
Every summer, pretty much. I think there was one summer we went to Kelowna, and we ended up getting lost and everything. Dad never wanted to go back there again. But, and I kind of regretted it in a way, but in a way I didn't, because the minute I got there, as soon as we got there, I just wanted to go off and meet Bee, my Aunt Beaky, who was Bee Freeman. She was the one who wrote the patchwork quilt and all that sort of stuff. But she was such a character, and I'd run over there and go see Bee, who was just such a fascinating person. She had she would bring out her lime cordial, and she'd have all her photo albums, and we'd go through it all the time. And she had bowls of agates. Whenever we had picnics on the beach, Bee was always finding all these fantastic agates, and she was quite fascinating, because she always had rolled cigarette that would sit on the corner of her lip where it was absolutely flattened. It would just sit there, and she could talk. She could talk and the ash would be like an inch and a half long, but she could still talk with the ash being an inch and a half long. It was so fascinating when I was a child to just see how long it would take for those ashes to drop off. But the story she would tell about the early days on Pender and everything, it was so fascinating. And I loved her, and I loved Hope. Hope and Jeff had Whalewich Farm, what used to call Jennings Farm. And I hate to say it, showing my age, but when I was young, we would have a phone. The old roll phone, ring four times for Uppabees and 3.5 for this and everything. So we would always have these phones, and and Hope had a cabin in the field we used to call Kelly's cabin, and we'd stay in that. And it was very rustic. It was you sort of fell into it because it had a slanted floor, and and by the time, finally you get the bats out after 2 nights and, kind of thing. But otherwise there was bats flying around all the time. But it was a great childhood and everything. And lots of fun running over the rocks, climbing the rocks, John throwing, what do you call these, and Metamese, green things at me and sticking them in me. And it's like, I had 2 older brothers. I had to be tough.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it was fun.
So when you were coming over on these adventures as a child, and I guess a teenager as well too, did you slowly start to have aspirations about, I really would like to try living there? Or how did that wind up coming about?
I didn't really, because I always wanted to, I thought there was a world out there that I wanted to see and do and things like that. So when I graduated, I went and lived in Vancouver, but I was always drawn back no matter what. I mean, Mom and Dad, after I graduated, they quickly moved to Pender and started building a house down on Gowan Point.
Okay.
So, yeah. Otherwise, they had the property, but we always kind of lived in other places over there before, but nothing steady. And Mom and Dad, they had their place in Chemainus, which was right across from the hospital, and for years, and it's still standing. I went there. It's still standing to this day, the old house that we lived in. But Mom and Dad sold that, and they went and they brought up a cottage from down at Jiggs and Derek, that's my aunt. They rolled this cottage up, just a 1-room cottage, and lived in that with no running water, no electricity, no phone for 2 years while they built the house. It was quite a funny time, because every time we had to phone Dad or for some emergency or something, we had to call Gertrude Bennett, which was just up the hill from them, who was practically stone deaf, and we had to scream in the ear, "Can you tell Mom and Dad?" Like, we were just screaming in there. And then she would run down, and she was like 85 or something like that, and she'd have to tell Mom and Dad that we were coming over or something like that. So yeah, it was pretty rustic. They had a big wood stove in there, but Mom made the best Yorkshire puddings in that stove. They were just like big, brown and black, like almost brown, like this size, in that old wooden stove. Yeah, it was crazy.
So it sounds like once the kids left the nest that they felt comfortable making the move to come to Pender, because that's something that they totally wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so what really strikes me though is a few times you've mentioned the storytelling that exists in your family. Has there been a lot of like a history of storytelling in the Pender family?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sounds like
it.
Yeah.
Dad was a good storyteller, and all the relations were. Anne, my aunt Anne, was married to Len Henshaw. He loved to tell stories, and it was great. Yeah,
it's interesting because obviously things are so different now, but it's so warming to hear a history of storytelling through families, because it's that's what I'm attempting to do here. Obviously, a little bit, right? Have people tell their stories, but that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So fast forward into. You lived in Vancouver for a while, and then you made the move to Pender?
I actually in Vancouver twice. I went when I was like 17, like right after graduation. And then I went back again later, after the kids left home. So I lived in Vancouver and then came back to Pender, and then I actually and then I lived on Pender for a few years, in the late 1887 to 91. Yeah, sorry, 19. Yeah, sorry, 19. And then I went back to the island and then I've been back since 2002 here on the island.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, it's interesting, like hearing about people's experiences on the South Island in particular, because you told me that you're part of the South Island Historical Society.
Yeah.
And I really got the sense of talking to people in the last few years doing this and other things that there was a big difference between the two islands.
Mm-hmm.
And that there was this rustic element that existed on the South Island, which still kind of exists
Well, it is
today.
bigger properties. I mean, you go in a Magic Lake and you have all these little properties. There's nothing like that down on South Pender. It's all sort of bigger lots. And when they did the Castle Road thing, those are a little bit smaller, but they're still not as small as what they have in Magic Lake here.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so when you made your first move to the island, were you living on the South Island that first time?
When I first came back, I lived up on Scarf Road, the first time Scarf Road, and then I lived at Port Wash. On Port Washington Road, I lived in the what they call the Manx, where the old church, St. Peter's Church, was right across the road, but now it's moved to where it is now, on Scarf Road. Yeah, so I lived there. Yeah, those places.
Okay.
And then I left there, went back to Nanaimo, Vancouver, and then came back again to Pender. But all the time I was gone, I just wanted to come back here.
Why?
Because I don't know, it was good. I went back to university. I went back to Malaspina University College and took courses and everything, and I really, really enjoyed it. But when I got out into just being in the towns, I just I don't know, I just wanted, I missed the community, and especially in Vancouver. I missed the community of Pender. There's such a gorgeous community here. You just can't get involved with people in those other places, really. It's hard. Their dance cards are all full. They don't really, I'm a pretty outgoing person, and every time I wanted to join something or whatever, it was, we don't really know you or this or that. Like, no one gives you a chance.
Which is just the opposite of here.
Yeah, it's the opposite completely.
Totally.
Totally.
Which is actually something I think I'd like to talk about a little bit, because we'll slide into talking about Solstice shortly here. But what sort of things were you able to do here that you got invited to or welcome to that really resonated with you when those earlier days?
Well, that's the thing is, bringing up Solstice, we were just talking about that this week, is that when I was here the first time, and I lived here for 5-6 years, and my kids did their sort of younger school years here, we started this little company called Solstice Theater, and it wasn't even put as a society then. It was just a group, and we put on this fantastic production called Treasure Island, which we are going to do again in 2021, which is 30 years later.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, it's going to be hopefully going to be a good production, but it was really good back in those days. I mean, I remember my kids, they were like sharks that went across the front of the stage. Like, we all did it as a community, and Kim Davis, who was quite an actor in his day here on Pender, he was Black Dog, and he was, you can't get to Salt Spring on Sunday. He would say, it was the best line. I've never forgot it for 30 years later. You can't get to Salt Spring, and you still can't get to Salt Spring on Sunday. So.
That island's hard to get to on the best of days. It's an annoying journey, it seems like. But, okay, well, where were the first plays, the Solstice plays? Where'd they happen?
At the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
everything was at the school for the first couple, I think. And then I left. Soon after that, because that was in 91, So I left in 92, yeah.
Well, seeing how we touched on Solstice, let's stay there for a little bit because you and I have a history with that, and it's always fun to talk about. But I didn't realize that you were there at the inception of.
Yeah, but I mean, I never did anything much with it. I went over back to Nanaimo. I went to university and all that sort of stuff, and working and living. And a couple of times I saw things that maybe I would go around when we were living in Qualicum. I went around and I said, is there any way I can get involved in your theater and everything? It's like, no. Like it was shut doors. So
Amazing.
I never bothered to do anything. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's so funny though, to think about it. Cause I've reflected on this numerous times and I thought, wow, I don't think I ever would have acted if it wasn't for the fact that I was living in a small community and it was so open. So you had the experience of putting the first play together, and then you left, and then you came back, and then you got back into the Solstice Theater, and we did a play together. Was that the first play?
There was before that. There was the choir had decided to bring in people to do like little kind of plays within, like in talking. So I did that, and then right after that was when I met Julia and Greg, and they said that they were going to put on this play called The Foreigner, and would I be interested in playing? And I said, yeah, sure. And then someone else was playing in that play too.
Yeah.
You.
It was my first try at community theater, and it was so fun.
It was very much fun.
Well,
very much fun.
I know that you wanted to talk about that a little bit, and so let's honor that wonderful play that happened, directed by Greg Nichols and
Julia.
Julia.
I know, and like I say, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that time where there was you played the bad guy, and there was one part there. I think you were. I don't remember exactly what you were saying, but you were always mean to me. My character was Ellie, and I was kind of like a bit of a simple person and stuff like that, but you were always very mean to me. And you said something, and I went, maybe it's just a phase. Maybe it's just a phase. And that was like, and all of a sudden you dropped and you started laughing. Like you just could not stop laughing. It was such a funny moment. Like, and, later on in the show, the timing of it just had to be so perfect. And I remember my grandson was in the thing, and he yelled out, "Grandma, you're so funny." It was so funny. Yeah, it was, but you were just like, you could not stop. You couldn't go on with your lines because you were laughing so hard.
That line had such a huge roar from the audience. All three shows. But is it because that play, for people who are unfamiliar with it, deals with racism, and we're in late 2020 right now, and it's a topic that's never not poignant, I think, because it exists in our world. But I think that was part of the reason why Greg and Julia wanted to do that, is that it had a social consciousness to it, or conscience, and for like a little sleepy island, where a lot of the plays are a little more comical. In general, it was pretty heavy. It hit pretty hard and
dealt with so many things.
It did. And if anybody has a good secondhand time machine, I recommend going back and checking it out. If you ever get the chance, it's well worth going for sure. But it was so nice to be involved in that. Like I think back so fondly to those times. And for people who have been involved in plays or haven't been involved in plays, it's such a great experience to do rehearsals.
Oh yeah. It's all part of it. It's a part of the whole thing. I think one of my favorite parts was when we were getting ready for the big show, and I think we were all sitting downstairs waiting, what we call the green room or something, and you came over and you said, "I have to say, I feel so horrible because I've been so mean to you." I says, I've been feeling really bad because I always have to be so mean to you. And I said, but it's part of acting. It's so fun. It's okay. It's fine. And I didn't think any much more about it till we went to the after party or something. And you gave me this letter you gave me a letter when I was leaving, and I didn't read it until I got home, but it was a letter from you in jail. Because that's where you were sent in the play, saying all the things that you felt bad about and that you were sorry for and everything. And I was just like so moved. It was such a great. I have it still. I'm going to keep it forever because it was just such a poignant thing. It just made me feel, wow, this is what acting's all about. It's like we get so into character and we do it. We have to do it, and it's so much fun.
Yeah. I forgot about that. I sent letters to all the other cast members in character, talking about how I was going to reform my ways, and I was apologizing.
While you were in jail.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I've just been thinking the last few months how I haven't really been doing too much creative stuff, and just reflecting back on those experiences. It's just so nice. It's so nice to be a part of a group and work towards something, and then have this accomplishment. And I don't know about you, but I really feel as if the show itself is almost anticlimactic. That the best part is the build up to it, because you go through this intense rehearsal period where you're working with people and you're refining things and you're building something together.
Yeah.
And man, it's so fun doing that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we Shanda Bosch and Ren Wild and I did oh gosh, I can't think of the name of it all of a sudden. When we were the three sisters and it was just like, wow. I mean, the whole tumultuous thing that we went through to get to that final end of that show. And at the end, we always had a big cake and we had to cut it up. And we just cut great big slabs and shoved it in our mouth and everything. It was Crimes of the Heart. I just couldn't think of the name of it. But it was a great moving experience. Yeah. One of my favorites.
That was actually, and in particular, Ren.
Oh, fantastic. She's so going to be, and she is actually off to acting school.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I predict big things for her. I do.
Good
and
prediction.
her voice, her singing voice is so beautiful. So she's got those two things to look forward to. So she's going to do good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
she was my backstage person in the early days. She would sit back there, and I always kind of knew that this is what she wanted to do, like she would be my changer and all that sort of stuff, and just sitting, waiting for it to change my costumes. And I thought, she loves it. So it's very rare to see that. So
I'm sure. And, I'll always remember, I think, just how amazed I was at how well she pulled that off. Because I don't know how old she was, 16?
Oh, my gosh. Barely. Yeah. 16.
Yeah.
15, 16, I think.
I think she was playing a character who was in their 20s.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was amazing. And it's interesting. Say what you want for a community theater. You can have amazing experiences, right? And that's part of what we're getting at with this show is that we're celebrating where we live in a way, right?
Yeah.
And really recognizing the charm and the beauty and the depth that exists. And I've been fortunate enough to be present at Solstice events, like whether in them or watching them, and just having the greatest time. And this island has great stuff. But anything else you want to say about Solstice before we shift gears?
No, we just we have some things coming up, and it's trying times right now because of COVID and not being able to put on shows, but we're working on things that we can maybe film some things. So yeah, we're going to do a production of It's a Wonderful Life coming up this Christmas, but we're going to film it over 4 days to keep the social distancing in order and everything like that. So
cool. Hopefully
it'll work.
Speaking of working on things, you've been working on moving your feet, going various places lately. So this is something I totally want to go deep into because I think it's so cool, Barb. So, well, first of all, you like walking.
I love to walk.
Okay.
Always have.
You have spent some time doing various walking trips in various places, but we'll touch back on those in a sec. But where have you been walking this past summer?
This summer, I walked out of my door to the ferry terminal, which is 14.1 kilometers. And then the next time I did a stint where I walked from the ferry terminal to Lake Cowichan, and I'm trying to do just trails. So I did Lochside, Galloping Goose, Souk Wilderness Trail, and then Cowichan River Trail. So over the Malahat and everything. So it's been a really fun experience, and it's hard to do in COVID times. I'm sorry, I don't want to keep bringing that up, but what has worked really good is that we have a Pleasure Way van, and Roger comes and picks me up at certain points, and then we go and camp. So we're doing this camping, walking sort of holiday thing, which has been really fun. So you're still keeping your distance, you're still doing things with, and still enjoying it. And I do it with my dog Nellie, who loves it. And we had some good long days there. The one that we did 24 kilometers over the zoo, up at the top of the Malahat and over. It was just her and I the whole time. It was beautiful. It was hot. And I remember I was expecting to have a few more streams along the way, and I'd only packed one big bottle of water, and we started running out of bottle water because as you know, I've got to give it to my dog too. So I remember accosting when we were coming down, was one of the first person I saw, this guy on this bike, and I accosted him and said, "Do you have any water?" I made him stop, and he actually gave me half of his water bottle just to carry on to where we were going to get picked up at Souk Lake. But it was kind of a funny moment. But I've had lots of adventures. So I've been doing it in series, and then I went back and did another series. I went back and did a few days to north of Lake Cowichan up at what's it called, Nit Creek or something. And then I decided I didn't want to walk the logging roads because it was just so dusty and everything. So I went immediately across and started in Chemainus again this last time and walked north of Nanaimo. So doing a Cowichan Trail. And if I can't get on any trails, I just don't want to walk on the highway. I walk the railway tracks.
You walked the railway tracks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Except the last time was a bit interesting because I was going to take it's the old Trans-Canada Trail, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the entrance to it. So I zipped down and got on the railway tracks, and I walked a little ways up, and I came out at the Cassidy, and there was this huge 4-car pile up. It was horrible. It was kind of crazy. And I didn't really want to hang around. I said, "What's happened?" They said, "Oh, this happened. There was parts of cars all over the place and ambulances." And so I started walking on more to Timberlands, and then and the traffic wasn't even moving hardly. And Raj had to catch me up. So, I ended up going to the Timberlands pub and walked in there, and I said, "Oh, what was all that accident?" And they said, "Oh, well, there was this guy who fled the scene of the accident. He caused this 4-car pile, and one person was killed, and there was other people taken to the hospital, but he fled the scene of the thing." And I'm going, "Oh my gosh, I'm walking along the railway tracks." I mean, he could have fled like right up there beside me and everything like that. It was kind of like that was a scary moment. But I had to wait for Roger for about 2 hours for him to get through the mess of it all to meet me. But we've had fun camping and in the different campsites. It's like we're seeing our backyard.
Yeah, totally. Well, actually, it's interesting. Just why are you spending all this time walking? What is it about?
I love it. I love walking. And I like long distance walking. I'd rather just going out and going for a walk around the block doesn't interest me. I like long distance walking.
Do you listen to anything while you're walking?
Oh, yeah. I listen to podcasts by certain people, and I listen to music. And when I did the Camino, which I just finished last October, which was 780 kilometers. I did 5 audiobooks.
So do you oscillate between some silence or?
Yes.
Yeah, you go back and forth.
Oh, absolutely. I don't even think about putting on anything until I'm like well into my journey, like 2 or 3 hours. I love to hear everything, the birds, I want to get the feel of everything. And then once you're getting over like 15, 16, 17 kilometers, then it's good to put something on to get the momentum going.
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay. Well, where did this all start? Where did the desire to go on these long walks start?
Well, the thing is, I think I used to do them with Dad a lot when I was young, but I think my real love started when I went to Ireland about 7 years ago, I guess, or 6 years ago now. I went and did 2 walking tours in Ireland, the Bear Way and the Wicklow Way. It was just awesome.
Boom.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
And a lot of times I'm by myself and I just love it. I love it. Yeah. One of the first one, I ended up walking most of the time with this Dutch girl and we just had a blast. And we just stayed together the whole time and everything. But when I did the Wicklow Way, there was quite a few days where I was just by myself the whole time. And that same was when I did the Camino too. I was with groups of people. I was a group with the people in the beginning, but then they wanted to walk so much longer days than I did. And so I just held back and just being by myself I love it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I can relate, but I'm just sort of thinking about someone listening to this who can't relate and just finding more of a way in to understand, because I love spending time by myself. I love just being in my thoughts and having that, and then being in motion as well too. It feels so good. So I can relate to what you're saying, but in terms of it took you until you were you said 6 or 7 years ago where you really discovered this.
Yeah, but I mean I did lots of long walks when I was younger too, but nothing in succession. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When somebody told me that you could go over here and then walk from sort of one B&B to the next B&B or something like that, is like, wow, that's a really neat idea. What an adventure, So you're not always, just every day you wake up, it's like, what's behind that next corner, and what's today gonna unfold for me? And I keep a journal all the time, and every day was a wonderful documentation of my experiences. I mean, it was fun, and you feel so good at the end of the day that you've accomplished those things. And maybe your feet hurt a little bit, or your leg. My legs never hurt. But my feet, sometimes I did get some blisters, but I got over it. You just get over it.
You do.
You succumb over that. You succumb over all the problems. I had a tooth that fell out on the beginning of the Camino, and after 2 dentists, I finally got that thing. But I went ahead. Like you just go ahead. You persevere, and it's the people you meet and the camaraderie that you feel at the end of the day. And I prefer to sleep in. Like I say, I prefer to camp rather than staying in even B&Bs or anything like that. It's so much more fun to sleep in these big things where you got 50 people and there's all these people snoring. You get used to it after a while, but you all go for dinner and you all talk about your day and you love it, it's just, you feel like you've done something. Yeah.
Nice. And it's interesting because we're all looking for meaning within our lives and the things that we do, right? And that I would imagine for some people just cannot understand. You just walk every day. You're just gonna put your shoes on and you just keep walking.
It's such a neat feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure. So it's a sense of accomplishment every day. It's a sense of empowerment. You're getting physical exercise. You're seeing new things. That it sounds really great. And then especially with what you mentioned about the Camino, which in the previous podcast with Joy, we really went deep into it. And you're in Europe.
Oh.
Multiple different countries.
Oh
So
my gosh.
you said the whole Camino Trail is 780 kilometers? Is that what
That
you
was
said?
the one that I started in. It was like Saint Jean de Port. Yeah. I mean, Joy's done ones that were all up in France and everything too. I originally wanted to do that, but that one is less traveled. The one I took was fairly well traveled. So, you pretty much, even that being said, I still had trouble finding a place to stay a couple of times, like we were rummaging around, but we did manage to find a place because they were so full. It was so busy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is one of the most powerful moments that you've had on the Camino Trail? What comes to mind in terms of the word powerful?
I don't know. I guess the stops along the way that there's one point there, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it.
It's okay.
Tarot or something where you it's a big mound of rocks with a big just a wooden thing, and everybody leaves their a part of themselves there, like a little thing. And I had this little saying that I was carrying around with me, and I left it there. And it's so funny because you never know who you're going to end up when you get there. And it was a crazy Irishman, and he was just so into it. Like he was just so empowered by the whole thing. And there's lots of Irish people on the Camino, but he was just with his power, with his feelings and everything. And it was just him and I walked up there, and there was another guy there, and he just stayed back. And I said, "Well, can you take a picture of us up on this thing?" So it was quite a moment. And I think the first day that I walked over the Pyrenees was probably one of the most fantastic moments. I was just like so worried because they said it's like straight up, and then this, what they call the down thing all the way down. I was just so worried that I wouldn't be able to make it the first day, and it was like 28 kilometers. And then I did get there, and we didn't have any place to stay. There was a whole bunch of us, and there was this huge rondisselle. It should have taken like 300 people, but it was that full that day. And there was a guy who bussed us off to this camp, and all those people that were with me who bussed up were with me for like almost the half of the way, because we bonded because we got shipped off to this other camp where we could stay. And it was like we were put into these little cubicles, and the guy was almost like a German commandant. He was like, it was quite a place. But we had a good food and everything. And those people, I still, every single one of those people that I was with in that group, we all Zoom each other. We are on WhatsApp.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
You're still in touch?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Every day we have another Zoom meeting on October 4th. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Wait, how many years back?
Because you just bond, like when you do things like that together, where we were just sort of shipped off to Baltimore, like just got together. Yeah. It was like, and they went ahead of me later on, like halfway through, and then I met a whole bunch more people, but it was good. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. And so the friendships that you have with these people,
Yeah.
that they're unfolding as time goes on.
And they're all
obviously.
around the world.
Neat.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, okay, so let's see if we can figure out this triad, because I'm sensing that there was a passion for theater. Would you say there was a passion? And there's certainly a passion for walking. What would be the third, if we're looking for the triad of Barb's passions? What would be the third passion in your life, Barb?
Oh, it's spending my time with my grandkids.
Oh,
For
okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my biggest passion.
Right. How many grandkids do you have?
I have Donovan, who's 13. That's Virginia, my older daughter's son, and Sam has 3 girls, Avery, Willa, and Pender.
Right, I remember that.
And they're all girls, and they're the delight of my life. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I love spending time with them. We go on camping trips every year. We do everything. Yeah, that's my my biggest thing. And of course, I'm actually still working, and I'm turned 65 this year.
Congratulations.
And but I love my job. I work at the clinic, and I love helping people in their days, and feel like I feel like it's a worthwhile job. I'm going to continue to work for another couple of years, especially through these times, and then I'll think of retiring, I guess.
Well, it's interesting because, with a small community and working at a clinic, it's you obviously get to see everybody come through the clinic, right? And that it's an interesting place to find yourself in, and seeing people when, they're not at their best. Obviously, that's what they're doing in the clinic, or they're in a vulnerable place. But how many years have you worked there for?
12.
12 years. You've worked there for 12 years.
Yeah, well, I guess it was because 2005 I worked at Poets Cove till 2008. So 2008 to now is
12 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Yeah, it'll be at the end of October. It'll be 12 years, I guess. Yeah.
Have there, well, obviously, I'm sure you've learned so much about yourself through that experience, but anything that you could share about things that you've learned about yourself along the way about having a position like that?
It was kind of like when I wanted to leave Poets Cove, I was a catering manager there, and it was a hectic. I was working 17-hour days and just kind of getting really tired of it and doing stuff. And I was like dreaming of a sort of a 9-to-5 job. There's something that I could just sort of take with me and just go and do until I finished working. And I just thought the clinic. Yes. Earlier on in my life, I always wanted to be a nurse, but it just never worked out. I actually went to nurse orientations and everything like that. But, I was on my own with my girls, earlier on in my life when they were like 4, and I just couldn't see it. Financially, I just could not see myself going to nurses training and doing that with 2 small kids. So, I just always thought, wow, I think I could like that. And I do. I love it. I love what I do.
Why do you love it?
Because I feel like I'm doing something for the people, the elderly people here on the island, especially looking after them, making sure that they get to their appointments. They come in there. Sometimes they're not feeling so good, and you can cheer them up. You can make them feel better, and you feel like you've done something in the day. You've accomplished something. You're looking after people.
Yeah.
In their final days. I mean, I think in 12 years, I've seen a lot of people from Pender come and go, and I've had some of them send me nice thank you letters that they care about how I cared about them. And it feels good. It feels good. I love it.
Nice. Just as you were saying that, I was looking in your eyes there. I was just thinking of how many people, when you said come and go, how many people have passed away.
Oh. So many. I mean, I can't even, but you honor them. You honor them. You honor their presence in their latter years. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes people get, some of them just go very sweetly and never really know what's going on. And then some people fight it. Some people do, some of the people are, they know that the time is coming, and they just there's no way they're going down or anything like that. And, you just help them along and just make it easy for them. It's hard. It's a hard time. There's a lot of elderly people on the island. There's lots of young people now, which is exciting. So you got the double thing. You got people that are ending their life, but then there's people starting out. We have lots of babies on the island now too. That's so exciting. I was there when we had a baby born in the clinic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was, they're not very many. They're told to leave the island when they're, like
They're
3 or
told
4
to leave
weeks.
the island.
But this one did not, and they weren't even going to take her in the helicopter because she was so far dilated. So she had the baby there, and it was pretty exciting. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So.
Just to stay on this topic for a little bit, because it's been something on my mind for a while. I think my aunt passed away in December, and we weren't that close, but it was really, really interesting to have a death happen in the family that was the immediate family, because I'd known her my whole life, but like I said, we weren't that close, and it really hit me harder than I thought it was going to, and really made me think about death quite a lot. And I've come around to having some very positive feelings about it, actually. But I'm just curious about yourself, that through experiencing so many people and so many different ways of people dealing with it, has that impacted your own perception of your mortality, or how you would eventually feel about the end of your life? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do, because I think about what I wouldn't do because of whatever. But I think my dad having dementia, and my Aunt Anne both had Alzheimer's, dementia, and to see I just hope that I don't go that way, sort of thing. But even though, that being said, they do say that it's a hereditary sort of thing. But when it really is, it's so sad for me to see people like my dad was just he loved life. He loved people. He loved everything about, he read, he was funny. He was all these sorts of things. And then all of a sudden that was totally robbed from him, like it was that one of those things. He just kept asking the same things every day. And it's like, the dad that I knew was totally gone. But, he would have some lucid moments, but, we looked after Dad until the very end, almost the very end, and before he went to James Bay Lodge. And, it was really sad. It was just so sad. And those are the ones that really, make me sad. But there is some that, I don't know. They just, their time comes, and they're just so happy that we have been there for them and everything. And I love it. I just love it.
Nice.
Yeah. I think dying is just something that we have to live with. But I mean, it'd be nice when they can die with just a good feeling in their heart, and to have their wits about them and everything like that. That's the way it should be.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing, Barb. I didn't know I'd go there with this.
Yeah,
I don't know why I did, but thanks for sharing. That's really great. But what's a great dad story? What's a great story of your dad that we can honor him with?
Oh, Dad was just he was a character. I'm actually a scrapbooker, and I'm scrapbooking all his like since the beginning of his life. But he was a writer. Like, he wrote to newspapers, everything. He had an opinion on every single thing. Like, he wrote to every newspaper. He kept every sheet, and he was just I don't know what you call it. He just had he just wanted to change the world, I guess, or something. And, but he was a liquor vendor, and, everybody talked to him. Everybody knew him in Chemainus when we grew up, and he was like, even the natives from Thetis Island, I just like, these are the kind of things that Dad would do. He would, they would come over and they would barter with Dad for a bucket of clams, for a bottle of scotch. And Dad would arrange it with them. And a couple of times I'd be at home, and all of a sudden I'd get this knock at this door, and there'd be this toothless old Indian with just like as old and bedraggled as anything, with a big bucket of clams, and handing them over to me because Dad had made a deal for a bottle of scotch. So those are my dad memories of my early days. But he was, he loved to walk, and he walked, and I walked with him, and he loved me because I was the only girl. I was the youngest and the only girl.
Right.
So we had a pretty good bond.
And you and your dad walked together.
Yeah, like he always made sure I was out walking, and he walked to work and back all his life. Like, he was a walker.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm carrying on Dad's tradition. And Dad was an actor and singer too.
He was a singer. I knew he was an actor. I remember that came up, but he was a singer?
Well, he did. He sang in all the, he was the star of all the productions in Chemainus. They used to have these hospital day productions every year, and he would drag me out to them. And I would just be like in the background in the chorus or something like that. But Dad always the main guy. He was always the main singer and everything. Yeah, he was the star of all the productions there.
Wow, so, really? And okay, the star.
Yeah. He was quite a character. Yeah, I miss him still. He's been gone since July 2003, and I still miss him. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing a good dad story. Well, it just makes me like want to know more about your mom as well too, right?
Oh, mom was your wonderful little English lady. She was just, had the soft-spoken voice, and never worked, never drove, never had her license, but she was always there. She was there for us kids, and she lived about 8 years after Dad passed away, so we had her for that, and Roger and I looked after her there, and John, my brother. So we had them till the end. That's one thing I have to say too about. I do find when I'm in this working in the clinic and everything is that I think when your parents get older, it is really nice to be able to look after them in their final days, and I think that's really important. They looked after you when you were young, so you should look after them when they get older. That's my sort of philosophy. And I did. I mean, we did. I checked on Mom every night. We lived in the cabin, and Mom lived in the big house, and I'd go check on her every night until it was the end of the days. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Good words. Good words, Barb. Seriously.
I think they're important words. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Because I think we should look after them.
Yeah, well, I guess it completes a cycle that, it seems as if there's a broken chain that exists if that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that the impact and the power of that probably ripples through time.
It does. It does. And I see it lots. Yeah.
When you see it, do you wind up seeing, because it's obviously not easy to do. There's challenges with it when you mentioned dementia.
Oh, I know it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is,
but we had Dad probably at home longer than we should have, because when they finally sent him off, they said, "Oh my gosh, you had Dad." I mean, he was like, he had a CT where there was like, I don't know if you know about Alzheimer's, but there's nothing there. Parts of the brain just disappear almost, kind of thing. So, but I remember his last day, and we still laugh about it because I think it was the day before or 2 days before he passed away there. My brother John and my nephew Jamie Pender and I think Bob were there, and they went and they took Dad out they took him out to the patio. They gave him he was still smoking. He was still smoking cigarettes at that time, but I don't even think he realized that he was smoking cigarettes. But he had a cigarette, and then they gave him this toffee gum, this toffee. I don't know why they gave him a toffee, but it got all messed up in his dentures, and they had to take his dentures out because it was all stuck up in there and everything. And so they put it back in, and they thought, oh, this is quite the scene and everything. And then so they started wheeling him back, and this nurse goes by, and he looks at her and he says, "Where you been all my life?" He says to this nurse, "Where you been all my life?" And it was like totally out of the blue. And it was like, that was sort of the funniest thing I'd ever heard, I mean, he hadn't really been talking anything. He didn't even recognize Mom when I had gone to see him. He always recognized me.
Okay.
He
Wow.
would go, my girl or something, but he didn't know anything. But it was, and then the next day we went and he had passed away. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that was just the day before. And he
Yeah.
thought- It's interesting to just to maybe finish off on this section with you talking about helping ailing parents. So the way I perceive it, I've never had to do that. I have an aging mother, but when you went through that experience and you're witnessing other people going through that experiencing, are you seeing? Because it's not just about duty and obligation. There's got to be a sense of satisfaction involved with, because when you're caring for another person and you're like sacrificing and you're helping, right? Like, I think as human beings.
I wanted to do it. I wanted to be with Mom. I mean, I made up little things. We'd spend time watching Coronation Street or having a gin and tonic at 5:30 or something. Like we'd make these little rituals and everything. And I know that was really special for her, like, I mean, you just make time to have time with them at the end, even though you don't even always have to be saying anything or anything too much or something, but it's hard. I know, because we've all got our jobs and we got our places and we're not always going to be there, but we had to come over and help Mom because Dad was going into his bad state of dementia and he'd smashed up the car and done all these other things. And so we sort of got thrown into that, looking after them. But it was a hell year, man, when we got there for that first year to go through that dementia with him. Oh God. It was really sad, but yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much all I can really say about that.
No, fair enough. But
Yeah.
that's once again, thanks for sharing with the times we're existing in right now, without naming it specifically. I think a lot of people are reevaluating their lives and how they're living them and deciding upon what's important. And when you say you have to, is it the spend time to make time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Thanks for sharing that. Really. Thank you.
It is. It's really important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any sections of your life that you want to talk about? But actually, before I let you answer that,
yeah.
you know what?
You're
Something
supposed to ask me this one other question that's supposed to be, yeah.
No, I was actually curious about this. This popped into my mind about earlier days on Pender.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the outdoor parties used to happen? Where on Pender did you ever go when you were a teenager and go hang out?
Oh yeah, it was always at the beach.
Always at the beach.
Well, we had beach parties. We'd have beach parties at the bridge, like down at the canal. Like no one goes down there and sits at the canal anymore. Like they go to Mortimer Spit, but there's the other side. We used to go down there, and then of course my Aunt Jigs and Derek Christie still have their place down at the end of Gowland there, and we were always down there. Gowland Point and Brooks Point were our main places that we would have outdoor. We would just always go down there and have get-togethers, and especially because we would have whole parties at Jigs and Derek's right there on the lawn. But then we'd always be out boating and everything like that too. So it was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
those were the places.
Bonfires.
I don't remember really having any bonfires or anything like that. Just picnics and lots of good food and games. Badminton. We always had games set up, and like I say, boating. Back in those days, we always got a good show of the whales, which I never get to see anymore. But
Oh, really? Okay. So the whales were more frequent.
oh
back-
yeah. Dad would always build us a raft, and we'd go out in the raft, and the whales would be going by, or we'd be rowing and everything. I got caught in the current one time, just off of the point, and I had everybody shouting me from the shore, and I was rowing, but I wasn't going anywhere for a really long time. So who knows where I would have ended up if they weren't all shouting at me. Yeah, we had lots of adventures. We would just spend it on the beach. Yeah, the whole time.
Nice.
Yeah. And we swam in that water too, believe it or not. I just went swimming this last summer when my daughter and her kids and Joey and everybody came over, and I just couldn't believe it. It took my breath away. Like, I don't know how I went in there when I was a kid.
That's funny.
It is, I don't know if you swam. Have you swam here?
Oh, yeah. It's cold.
Oh,
Like, I wouldn't call it swimming. I call it jumping in and jumping out.
yeah. It's a nummify. It's like you just get in and you get out really quick.
Yeah. There's no swimming for me. It's just like, it's really hot out and I want to get the sweat off, and then I can just like get back out.
But it is invigorating.
It is. It's a good thing to do. Like, we live on a small island. We have ocean access all over the place.
My dad went in swimming all the time.
Really?
Yeah. He would do, ooh, 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 every time he got in there, but he would be in there.
It makes you feel alive. So are there any areas on the island that where things used to happen? Because I was actually, for some reason, Clam Bay popped into my mind. I've heard stories of Clam Bay and things going on there. They used to have social functions.
Yeah. And down at Falaka's. But I think back, if you want to go back even earlier, they seem to do a lot of rowing over to Cisterna and Maine and have picnics over there.
Really?
That was the biggest events, was to go over to the other islands. Yeah, and then they would come over here, but they would row. They'd row over there all the time. Yeah.
So when you say row, would how many people would be in a boat?
Probably 6 a boat or something like that. Yeah. It really, everybody rowed around. They row over to Hope Bay to go to the store, like, yeah, Dad said it was nothing to do a good row around the island.
It was nothing to do a good row around the island.
Yeah, to go over and get your supplies and come back. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is. It is. It's kind of, I would have loved to have been, and this is showing my age, but I do remember as a young girl, the Driftwood was just a restaurant and a garage. There was nothing else, and it was gravel road all the way to mom and dad's. Like, so, I mean, there was no pavement or anything. It was pretty. Yeah, it was.
People think that there's not much here now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, really. Yeah, but you can imagine when there wasn't even a bridge.
Yeah.
Not even a bridge.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool that you've gotten to experience that, and because I only know this island as having a bridge and connecting.
I know, but that was in 1955, the year I was born, that they put the bridge in. So that's 65 years ago.
Boom.
Putting that into perspective. Ooh.
Yeah. Where do you think that you want to be heading in the next 5 or 10 years or so?
I'll never leave Pender. I think I told Roger if I move back to Pender, I am going to rot here.
Whoa.
I'm not going to go anywhere ever again.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It's kind of a really neat feeling when you don't want to. You just want to stay. Like, there's nothing. I just want to stay here forever. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I like that feeling because I think I grew up in Schmitz, and then I kind of lived in Vancouver, and then I lived in Nanaimo and all these places and stuff like that. I sort of roamed around, not anywhere far away from the Lower Mainland, but it's nice to know that you're steady here and staying here. It's a good feeling. Nice. It's such a good community. It's such a great community.
Seems like it's only getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely. I think we're gonna wind it down here, and I think that this has been great so far. But is there anything that you want to touch on that we didn't get to? Anything that you want people to know about for sure? Or?
No, I think it's good. I think it's good. Yeah. It's been great. Mm-hmm.
It has been great. Seriously, Barb. And I don't know if I'm going to include this or not, but thanks for reaching out and getting me to do this, because it's nice. Like, these are so special to do. And it's funny. I was thinking about the feeling I had when I was driving home today. I was like, oh, you're right. Barb's going to be coming over and I'm going to be doing an interview. And it's like, hadn't done one of these in a while. And I started to get excited. And I was remembering, like, right, you do love doing this. This is fantastic. And It's nice. It's nice to get to know more about people, and it's nice to sit across from
Well, I
them.
talk to people all the time, and they say they listen to all your things. So I think you've reached out to a lot of people here, so it's good.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that we get to celebrate other people's lives and celebrate.
Oh, it's so important.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, in celebration of you, thanks, Barb. Thanks for coming in.
No problem.
I thought we were done. I thought we were finished up.
Yeah, but I mean, it would have come to me anyway. But
thank goodness you remembered now. While the mics were still relatively hot. But the obvious second question that I have to ask that I forgot that you reminded me of is that who's helped you along the way on Pender Island?
Okay, I have to say, and I say it to everybody, and I mentioned her early, is B. Freeman. To have had the privilege of knowing her is just a once in a lifetime thing. And like I said, I wish I had gone to maybe other places than coming to Pender every summer for for holidays and stuff like that. But she was just such a character and she instilled in me my love of the family and the history and what happened, how we all came to Pender and how everything happened. And that's why I've scrapbooked our whole family in the early days, and it's come back to this, right up to, I'm up 1970s now or something, but the stories that she told and I just couldn't wait to get to it. But she influenced me to love and cherish Pender forever. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you mentioned her earlier when we were recording as well too. Yeah. And so just this, I don't know if kooky is the right word.
Yeah. She's a character. I mean, she wrote the Pender, the patchwork and the Outer Islands, which has been the book for these islands for years. And she married 3 times. I mean, 3 of her husbands died before she was she just had so many adventures and everything. She's filled me full of adventure, history, love of the Gulf Islands and everything. So I think I have to put her down as probably my favorite person.
Okay. And so
that influenced my life.
Sounds like she was a really passionate person.
Oh, they're just, she would just open her mouth and you would just be enthralled.
Really?
Yeah. Just her to tell a story or something is something I never forgot when I was 10 years old. A long time ago.
What was her magic? How did she draw you in? What was it?
Just come on into my house and I'll tell you a story and we'll look at pictures. I would immediately go to her photo albums and then and we'd go through them all again every summer or something like that. We'd always look through them and she always had to find the best agate on the beach. And I told you that cigarette, she could roll a cigarette with one hand. She would put the paper out and put the tobacco in and roll it like that and it just sat in her mouth the whole time.
I wouldn't expect anything less from a lady that held a cigarette in her mouth for ages. She better roll it with one hand. No, that's fantastic.
And I can't look at lime cordial any other way. Is that she always had a glass of lime cordial for us, and it was fun.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's been people in my since in the latter years, but I don't think anybody who's sort of matched up to that. It was just one of those things. I'm so in a way, I'm so glad that I had that time. Before
Fantastic.
She passed away. Yeah.
I hope that somebody else listens to this who knew her and gets to hear that. It's nice. It's nice to get to honor people who have really impacted us and helped.
Oh yeah.
But it's interesting because the question of who's helped you along the way. So she helped you in the sense
in my younger years to help me along. I think gave me a purpose in life and a good direction. But I think here on Pender in the recent years, no, I just can't really. There's many.
No, fair enough. I was just trying to get into the because it sounds like what I'm hearing, and you could clarify that she helped you in the sense that she was just present and
she was just present, and yeah, she was there. And I think, and of course my dad, he would collaborate on the stories with her, and she enthralled me with I love history. I love history, where we come from and where we're going, and you have to know your history before you can kind of move on, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one of my biggest things.
Cool. I feel like I've learned a lot here, Barb. Seriously.
Yeah,
no.
good.
I feel like there's some life lessons that you've dropped here that it goes beyond what has come out through words. Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, how about that? Well, thank goodness Barb remembered what the second traditional question was, and I'm glad that we were able to squeeze that in at the end. To honor that interview with her, I decided that I would come to Fawn Creek Park. So Fawn Creek Park is located on the South Island, just on the other side of the bridge. So if you hang a right, just past the entrance to Mount Norman, it's a little trailhead that's on the right-hand side. So this trail is a loop, and it drops down towards the ocean, and to complete the loop, it probably wouldn't take any more than 15 minutes, but really beautiful little spot with all sorts of great big fir trees, ton of salal and ferns, of course, is the undergrowth, and this little creek that's actually running right now in the first week of October that I'm beside as it's leading out towards the ocean. And the reason I decided I'd come here was A, wanted to find a place on the South Island, and B, I wanted to honor Barb's adventures and hiking in the last little bit and come to a place that's a little off the beaten path like she's been experiencing in her life lately, going on trips to Vancouver Island. So if you're listening to this, thank you for listening very much. It's been 202 days since I've done a full interview with someone, and it's pretty nice to get to do this again. And I thought that the numbers lining up with 202 and 2020 were interesting to observe that. So thank you once again. Thank you to Ben McConkey for providing the theme music to the show. Thank you to Barb, and thank you to this beautiful place that we exist in and all the wonderful people that have chosen to make this place home, because it's a pretty wonderful place to be. Be well and have fun out there. Until next time.